everyone, Rose Webster here, and I thought I'd do an update since it's been a while. Happy Easter, by the way. I want to give you a rundown of how far back I went in my research, and really where I began was 2016. And this timeline here I want to show you kind of puts everything together because it took me a long time, but it was since February 2016 that Dr. Ayers found that colics were Zika vectors. Now, I knew colics were much more prevalent than Aedes. Aedes only represent like 5% of disease-carrying insects. So colics are 20 times more prevalent. And Dr. Ayers was ignored and derided, and there was a study came out said only one discordant study. Well, now we have 5 more teams have confirmed her results, but we have no one in public health warning anyone. And colics are everywhere. They're rare in Denmark, which amazingly corresponds with upticks in sperm counts in men in Denmark, but 60% drops in sperm counts among Western men. And I did write Dr. Levine, and he just thanked me, and that was the end of that. So I want to show you this timeline because I dug back to 1902, 1903, when Graham felt that colics was a dengue vector. And Aedes was just a possibility. And then in 1907, Ashburn and Craig confirmed colics as a vector. Now, this really got downplayed all the way up to the point of Zika, where Dr. Lanciotti was punished for exposing the flawed Zika assay that failed to show with accuracy the 4 dengue viruses. And that's huge because that's a hemorrhagic virus. Now that's also been found, hemorrhagic viruses and Wolbachia, which I'm getting to. Wolbachia is the cancer-causing pathogen that is emitted by the nematode. Now, researchers that are targeting the nematode did get the Nobel Prize, and that's great. But it's not the worm that's the problem. It's the Wolbachia the worm emits. That is the pathogen. And it also can add over 1,000 new genes to a host. And Chen, Dong, et al. Found in 2014, they warned us early that it causes lymphoma and should be further evaluated. Now, moving right along, again, I want to show you this early paper. 5% Aedes represents a small percentage of disease-carrying vectors. And daytime active was what you were told, the mantra, daytime active. Well, you know what? Nighttime active are 95% of the problem. And we also have ticks. But I did want to show you in 2016, there was a little bit of PR about it. Dr. Hunter confirmed Dr. Ayers' results, and she's Canadian. And even wrote, and it's barely cited, linking only Aedes aegypti with Zika virus has worldwide public health implications. And I want to highlight that as well. That was July 2017, her paper there. Okay, so right now we're in the midst of coronavirus, which is sounding like the worst thing in the world. Meanwhile, the researchers I've talked to, they found that, like 12% of people are getting it, less than 90% are having symptoms, 80% are recovering. We're hearing very similar things to Zika. 80% no symptoms. Well, is there a cofactor? Yeah, I think it's Wolbachia, but I think it's been downplayed and ignored, and we can't even mention it. Although there's some researchers not funded by the people that are releasing Wolbachia that are trying to bring this forward. Now, I just realized that Dr. Alison McGeer was working with the WHO on the coronavirus. Dr. Tam has connections to the WHO. So if the WHO is endorsing Wolbachia, anyone connected to the WHO is not going to acknowledge it. It's not happening. Now, in 2011, Mason and Arnoff found that there was no increase in group A strep antibiotic resistance. This is a very good thing because we're all here. Oh, no, not too many antibiotics. You're going to have a big problem, blah, blah, blah. Well, there was an ignored paper also in 2014. They found the 16S rRNA genes classified as rickettsia. Now, that's in the phylogenetic tree of Wolbachia. And they found it, and they just call it a novel pathogen lurking in airways because nobody can seem to nail this down. It's removed from assays. And then Chen et al., the Wolbachia 16S rRNA and genes were twice detected. And once they treated this gent with it, he was completely cured of his lymphoma. So this is huge. This should be making the rounds in every oncology department. Now, I did warn the Canadian government in 2016. Dominic LeBlanc got back to me March 2017, thanking me, sending it along to Jane Philpott. I never heard from her. And Dr. Tam absolutely ignored it. Again, she has WHO ties. And she said the Kulik species were much less effective vectors of Zika. Well, this is all false because we've got 5 more teams that have since, here they are, have since confirmed it. But nobody's saying anything. And this was absolutely bizarre. I started to look up where this gene, the 16S rRNA gene, which is the Wolbachia sequence, it was found in over 1,000 ticks, May 2017 in New Jersey. And the case fatality, now they call this severe fever with thrombocytopenia syndrome and its pathogen. Up to 50% of people die. Well, that's huge. I don't know. This is just huge. And yet, when I found some medical education things, it was saying climate change is causing vector-borne disease epidemiology to spread. And I thought, what's this? And they were ignoring the whole thing out of New Jersey. And then the New Jersey IMT was deactivated June 2018, even though this tick can reproduce without a male, a vector of several viral, bacterial, and protozoan agents of livestock and human diseases. And they had found it in 6 states. So it was Arkansas, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Virginia, and West Virginia. But then they deactivate it, which means they're not going to follow it anymore. Well, what happens is this tick it's not going to stop. Each tick lays thousands of eggs. And in every life stage of the tick, Wolbachia is present. It's maternally inherited. So it's in all life stages, even these eggs that end up, some of them decay, and then things get airborne. So all it took was 2 years later, less than 2 years later, February 2019, many newborn infant deaths in New Jersey. And here was the potential range. As you see, it can go right into Canada and the Maritimes and the Midwest there. And in the meantime, we've got this big push that climate change is killing things. And so we're all to blame. And so I've been fighting that a little bit too. Now, I had an interaction with Gerald Cutney. And when I explained to him why it made perfect sense that the North Atlantic right whales were dying, he blocked me. Now he denies it. He says he doesn't remember blocking me. So there you go. Gerald Butts, this was interesting. I should point out, too, that Catherine Hayhoe and Michael Mann blocked me without any interaction, just prior to anything. And then Gerald Butts posted, Sydney is on fire. And I thought, Sydney's on fire. And so I followed the weather in Australia. And I thought, if it's on fire, this is really odd because there's researchers there that I'm in contact with. Well, sure enough, it's not. And I've been following it for months. Here's December 24. And then here's, well, April 3rd. And what's happened in Australia, it's getting a little cooler and a little wetter, not flooding. It was never on fire. Bushfires are natural. What they've done is the 67 years of bushfire and FRB data here, what they've done is they've tried to keep people from doing planned burns, which actually keeps everything in check. And over 200 years of data has gone into proving that. So they've had a problem not listening to experts. And but actually, it's there's nothing there. And then I found out H. longicornis is in this area of Sydney. Now, this is just this year. I was like, wow. So H. longicornis is there because people were posting mammals are dying and people are dying in Sydney area and all this. And I thought, gee, isn't that interesting? H. longicornis shows up again. Now, thing about Culex and H. longicornis is they both lay eggs in clusters, like Culex about 100 to 300 eggs in a raft, and ticks thousands of eggs in a little bunch. And the newest finding with Culex is that the mosquitoes were behaving contrary to what the textbooks were saying. Up to 60% do not lay eggs on the surface of water. They say it's always in a raft on the water. They lay eggs near boggy, swampy, watery areas on leaves or just about anything near the water. So I thought it would be helpful to see where in the world the wetlands are. And as you can see, it almost mimics where some of this coronavirus, these reports of these deaths. Now, the thing about the coronavirus is the presence of a virus facilitates the invasion of Wolbachia. So it's very much following the path of Zika and even flu. And if you look in the study literature, it goes back to flu epidemics where they found back the people that died, 75% of the lethal shock was due to gram-negative bacteria. So just by virtue of a virus needing a host, Wolbachia is actually a bacteria that is metabolically active. It has everything a virus needs. So I think some of these viruses are getting into it and being transported within the body inside them. Now, I've been trying to knock on many doors about Wolbachia causing lymphoma, and yet in the news we're told half of us will get cancer, half of Canadians, half in the UK, half in the US, and it's going to be your own fault, of course, right? Bad habits, right? But no one will test for Wolbachia. Now, I do want to show you this. You might think ticks, what can they transmit? Well, actually, co-infection of ticks is the rule rather than the exception. 5 to 8 pathogens within a tick being transmitted at every life stage is not rare. In fact, it's more common. And these team of researchers in 2016 were kind of baffled because in European studies, it was only 0.9% or 1% of French or adult ticks that were in Europe that had Wolbachia. Well, they found 19.2%. So that's a huge jump, almost 18% jump in ticks that carried Wolbachia. Now, how do they get the Wolbachia? Well, birds, they hitch a ride on migratory birds. Birds eat the newly infected Wolbachia-infected 80s, because a lot of birds are insectivores and some aren't. So these birds will get some of this into their system, and then the ticks feed off them and then take a hitch a ride. Migratory pass, especially Arctic terns. There was an Arctic tern die-off in 2014, 2 years after Brazil's field trials with Wolbachia, and that should have set alarm bells off. Of course, when the whales were dying, I knew, well, humans are next because their fertility and body temperature are so close to ours. The thing here about ticks you want to know is they can live up to 6 years. And they transmit disease at any stage of their life. So if you look at these female lays thousands, you look at these ticks and these thousands of eggs and imagine one is laying thousands. Some of this will decay and get windblown and so on and get into the air. Well, when I wrote Dr. Jiggins, I didn't hear back, but he had said hundreds of researchers have said Wolbachia cannot be cultured. Well, I found the hidden study from 2003. I found it can grow in human lung cells. So yes, It can be cultured. And it's also disturbing that papers are saying it's too big to pass the blood-brain barrier, and it's not. Beale found in 1978 Wolbachia can range in diameter from 0.25, I think it's nanometers. I could be wrong on the unit there. Very tiny. It can pass the blood-brain barrier and the other barriers in the body. I just lost my spot on here. Sorry, just a sec. Just keep it running. So in Korea, and they were talking about, you know, people in Korea were coming down with this coronavirus. Well, sure enough, there it is in Korea. Only 2 people cited their paper. And H. longicornis is there, and notably almost, you know, up to 50% die. Almost all tick-borne diseases in Korea are known to originate from H. longicornis. And here's another line. Many other kinds of animals have also detected H. longicornis. And if you look at the acknowledgement and conflict of interest, there's no Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which means this is ethically sound work. Anything I find that's funded by Global Grand Challenges, Bill and Melinda Gates, pretty much concludes more studies are needed, or it's poorly understood. They don't really want to go there, and they won't name it. Because Bill and Melinda Gates, Bill Gates funded the 2 papers that okayed Wolbachia for release without any test for vertebrate species safety. No test for it. They relied on Hertig's experiments in 1936 on chicken embryos and something else. But it's evolved since then. It obviously has. If Chen et al. And other researchers have found it growing in lung cells, Chen et al. Found it causes lymphoma, then obviously this thing since 1936 has evolved, and that's what happens with bacteria. It evolves. So I was really surprised to find this paper, but happy to find it. New Zealand Biosecure. And H. longicornis was identified in 1901. Now, remember, I was digging back in the mosquito research to 1902. So this is really interesting because they even tested it on house sparrows and found a house sparrow in 1970 could host this tick. And, you know, larvae are primarily found on birds and smaller mammal species. Now, the thing is to know is Culex bite birds in the spring and then switch to humans July to November. And this tick, it's only in the larval stage from April, May, June, and July it starts to become nymphs. But the reason why things are going to hush down now, and this is the ideal time to get DDT out, and I'll show you that next, things will hush down for a bit now. But what will happen July to November without DDT, there'll be a big uptick in people dying from the co-infection of Wolbachia, right? Or they'll have uveal melanoma, or they'll have lymphoma, or they'll have some other P53-related weird cancer, right? And it's male killing, so more male babies are going to die, too. Now, the thing is, Dr. Conover invented the cure for this class of pathogen. So there's quite a few, and they can even be used in combination. It was barely reported azithromycin worked on Zika, and it's safe in pregnancy. There's also rifampicin, which can be used in combination, I believe. From what I've read in study literature, doxycycline is a mainstay of tick-borne pathogens. There's minosyn as well. Now, there might be more than that. But I want to highlight that, yeah, in Canada and in France, all they do is limit the testing to Lyme, and that's black-legged ticks. Brown-legged ticks, they don't even touch, and this is a brown-legged tick. This is a scary brown-legged tick. Now, they also identified emergence of heartland virus, first reported in 2009. Well, 2009 was the key year it was released globally that we knew of with Wolbachia. And then in 2016, it was released in 4 other states. So they don't really say what the virus is. The virus is particularly virulent for humans, but has little or no pathogenic effect on livestock. Fatality rate, 3 to 30%. That's pretty high, 30%, a third of people. And again, tick-infested migrating birds, birds migrating into Europe, and so on. This is how they're carried over. And it's, I want to show you this because I just found this recently, and I didn't realize how bad a shape we're in until I saw this. This is where H. longicornis is happy to live off all kinds of mammals and humans and transmit Wolbachia and whatever else. It could be dengue as well, and whatever viruses. But the co-infection that's killing people, 75% of it is gram-negative, and Wolbachia certainly fits with that. So I want you to have a good look at that. And now I posted a few things on social media. It is small enough to pass the blood-brain barrier. Now, here's the deal. This whole social distancing thing is kind of silly because in general, humans and horses are dead-end hosts. They don't really amplify viruses. Birds can amplify a virus up to 1 billion times more than a human, and that's not an exaggeration. And, of course, ticks can carry these things on for 6 years and so on, and acquire other pathogens, up to 8 pathogens, I believe. And the thing is, it's 91% of zoonotic viruses that are spread by wildlife. So blaming distancing between people is really kind of silly. I would wear a mask outside. Any mask will help because Wolbachia is bigger than viruses. It can probably house a few viruses. They found immature particles of dengue to be very infectious, in fact, which went the opposite of another paper that said they couldn't transmit it. So we've got these two ends going on in the scientific community, and all you're hearing are, oh no, it's safe, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. We have enough evidence that Wolbachia causes problems in humans now. So any mask will do, and it's not even that you get one little bit of Wolbachia and suddenly you're dead. It's about infectious dose and your body size. Yeah, you don't want a human coughing on a baby. Whether or not you're sick, this is the thing. People are using this like, oh, you're going to get someone sick, you cough. Really, it's the bird's nest outside that you're walking by that has thousands of tick eggs that are decaying and the contents are blowing around. That's 3,000 times more infectious than the guy that coughs on you in the grocery store or might cough. So it's getting silly. It's getting really silly. And the problem is I've reached out to the medical hierarchy, but what I get is my image is blurred and they just ignore me. And Sean Watley decided to go along with the climate change as a real side of things, which is very telling. The maturity level is very telling. So I don't know why we have coroners and oncologists on a pedestal. If half of us are going to get cancer, you know what that tells me? No one's an expert in oncology. No one. They could use some fresh eyes, right? So here, I want you to know what's going on here. We have enough food for 10 billion people. We could fit the whole population, 7.6 billion people into Texas with plenty of room. We're not running out of room. We're not running out of food. We use less than 0.5% of 347 hectares of forest. So the toilet, I don't know why people are insane over the toilet paper thing. It's kind of crazy. But here, I want to let you know that DDT is safe. It's been proven over thousands of years. They tested people and populations with high exposure, medium exposure, and people never exposed, and checked them 50 years later. Thousands of people, no change in their health. No change. If that doesn't convince you, Well, Gordon Edwards for years demonstrated the non-toxicity of it by eating spoonfuls at his university lectures. So it's a lifesaver. I don't see any point of more study is needed and all this garbage and poorly understood. We've got enough here. We've got people dying. The reason why New York and New Jersey are very vulnerable is there was 11 years of NALED, N-A-L-E-D, that was being used, 11 years of it, and it was found to increase disease-carrying mosquitoes, perhaps ticks too, but I'm not sure if ticks were studied at that time. It doesn't matter. They all get in via the birds. You see, culics and ticks, the bird is the common host there. And combined, this is over 90% of what's spreading this stuff. And the virus is 20%, 25% maybe of the problem at the most, the viruses. And that they're same with Zika, flu, corona. This is, you're told like 5% of the truth here. You're not told the whole truth. And I don't see that we have to use anything else that other than what's already in our toolbox, which is Dr. Conover's class of antibiotics. Get Wolbachia, the full assay, back on the radar because researchers have found it's missing. Rickettsia, the full species, is missing. They can't identify it. And Taiwan CDC is the same deal. They keep submitting stuff and they can't identify the exact pathogen. It's like it's been erased. So we don't need to do more research. We need to save some lives. We've got DDT and we've got Dr. Conover's class of antibiotics. And you got to test for gram-negative, however you're doing that. I'm sure there's a few ways to figure that out. But in the worst case scenario, 75% of the lethal shock is gram-negative. And that goes back many decades. So thanks again, and I'll keep you up to date.